Today, we will discover the background of famous Confederate generals and what made them take up arms against their own country. Some Southern politicians considered Abraham Lincoln's election an act of war. They thought that army would take their slaves away. Secession meetings started to grow throughout the South, and war was just around the corner. Many famous generals decided to take their native state's side. Robert E. Lee. Robert Edward Lee, son of Revolutionary War hero Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee, was born in Stratford Hall, Virginia, and appeared destined for military glory. The Lee family did not have great wealth. Without the funds to attend university, young Robert E. Lee enrolled at the United States Military Academy at West Point. He graduated second in his class with no demerits in 4 years and went on to work as an engineer in the United States Army. 2 years later, he married Mary Anna Randolph Custis, an ancestor of George Washington's adopted son, John Parke Custis. However, Lee had never stepped foot on a battlefield. Instead, he spent 17 years as an officer in the Corps of Engineers, examining the nation's shoreline defenses. Lee's first fight came during the Mexican War. He worked as a captain under General Winfield Scott. Later, Scott wrote of Lee's outstanding performance in the war, calling him the very best soldier I ever saw in the field. Lee was the superintendent of West Point from 1852 to 1855, and he was in charge of educating many of the men who would either serve under or against him on the Civil War battlefields. Lee was tasked with putting an end to John Brown's planned slave uprising at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, in October 1859. Lee barely needed an hour to put an end to Brown's raid. Because of his reputation as one of the best officers in the United States Army, Abraham Lincoln offered Lee command of the Federal forces in April 1861, but he declined and accepted a general's commission in the newly formed Confederate Army, claiming that he could not fight against his own people. Stonewall Jackson. On January 21, 1824, Thomas Jonathan Jackson was born in Clarksburg, Virginia. Jackson's 6-year-old sister died of typhoid illness when he was only 2. His father, attorney Jonathan Jackson, died of the same illness a short time later, leaving Julia Neal Jackson with 3 children and a large debt. Jackson enrolled in West Point in 1842. He was older than many of the other students, struggled with the curriculum, and was frequently mocked for his poor background and lack of education. However, Jackson studied hard and eventually achieved success in school, graduating in 1846. Jackson left West Point just as the Mexican War began and was deployed to Mexico as a lieutenant in the 1st U.S. Artillery. He immediately established a reputation for toughness and boldness, and by the end of the war in 1848, he achieved the rank of brevet major. Jackson spent 10 years teaching artillery tactics and natural philosophy at the Virginia Military Institute in Lexington. He was far more successful at teaching artillery than natural philosophy, and some cadets hated him for his rudeness, lack of sympathy, and odd personality. Jackson's later years in Lexington won him a reputation as an honest and loyal man of deep faith. He avoided drinking, gambling, and smoking. When Virginia seceded from the Union in 1861, Jackson accepted a position as a colonel in the Confederate Army and set out for war, never to return to Lexington alive. Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Phineas Davis was born in Kentucky in 1808 and raised in Mississippi. He was the family's 10th and youngest son. Davis was heavily affected by his elder brother Joseph, a wealthy lawyer and planter who acted as a father figure. Davis departed Transylvania University in Kentucky that year to attend the military academy at West Point. Davis graduated 4 years later, ranking in the bottom third of his class. He soon fell in love with Sarah Knox Taylor, Colonel Zachary Taylor's daughter. In 1835, she died from malaria. Later, he married New Jersey's governor's daughter, Verena Ann Banks Howell. Davis resigned his army commission and returned to his cotton plantation, Briarfield, given to him by his brother Joseph in Davis Bend, Mississippi. After 8 years on the plantation, Davis emerged to pursue a political career. His first attempts were unsuccessful, but in 1845, he was elected to the United States House of Representatives from Mississippi. It was his only election victory throughout his career. When the Mexican-American War broke out in 1846, Davis left his congressional seat to become colonel of the 1st Mississippi Rifle Regiment. General Taylor's praise for Davis's heroism won him national recognition, and he was chosen to fill a seat in the United States Senate. As a senator, Davis actively protected the South's interests in the growing sectional conflict over slavery. Davis resigned from the Senate in January 1861, following Mississippi's secession from the Union. The Confederate Congress met in Montgomery, Alabama the following month and quickly elected Davis, the Southern leader with the most spectacular political and military record, as President of the Confederacy. J.E.B. Stuart. J.E.B. Stuart, the Confederacy's greatest cavalryman, was born in Patrick County, Virginia. He left home at the age of 12 and attended 3 years of school in Wytheville, Virginia. Stuart was accepted into West Point in 1850. There, he met several future Civil War generals, including Robert E. Lee. Stuart excelled in his studies and was appointed a cavalry officer after showing his horseback riding abilities. Stuart graduated from West Point in 1854 and was briefly assigned to a United States Army battalion in Texas before being transferred to the 1st Kansas Cavalry in 1855. Stuart took part in many Indian clashes and the Bleeding Kansas incident along the Kansas-Missouri border. He was also sent by Lee to crush John Brown's raid at Harper's Ferry. After Virginia seceded from the Union in April 1861, Stuart, a slaveholder who had long declared his loyalty to his native state above the Union, resigned from the United States Army and returned to the South with his family. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Forrest was born into a struggling family and raised in rural Tennessee and Mississippi. His hard childhood shaped his aggressive and violent nature. When Forrest turned 16, he became the family's major breadwinner. In 1841, Forrest and his uncle Jonathan Forrest established a business in Hernando, Mississippi. In 1845, his uncle was killed in a street brawl over a business dispute, and Forrest replied by murdering 2 of the killers with a pistol and a Bowie knife. That year, Forrest married Mary Ann Montgomery, a member of a prominent Tennessee family. He relocated to Memphis in 1851 and eventually became a millionaire, getting money by trading animals, brokering real estate, cultivating cotton, and, most significantly, by selling slaves. By the time the American Civil War broke out in 1861, he was one of the richest people in the southern United States, with a personal fortune that he claimed was worth $1.5 million. After the Civil War started, Forrest volunteered as a private in the Tennessee Mounted Rifles, using his own money to help equip the unit. John Bell Hood. John Bell Hood, the son of a physician, was born in Owingsville, Kentucky in 1831. Hood was appointed to the West Point in 1849, where he studied with future Civil War generals James B. McPherson and Philip H. Sheridan. On March 3, 1855, after serving in Missouri and California, he was promoted to second lieutenant and put into Company G of the elite 2nd United States Cavalry. On July 20, 1857, Hood, commanding a reconnaissance patrol from Fort Mason, was wounded by an arrow in the left hand while fighting the Comanches at the Devil's River's headwaters. This was one of the most intense battles fought by the 2nd Cavalry in Texas. Hood was promoted to first lieutenant on August 18, 1858, but he resigned from the Army on April 16, 1861. Hood, dissatisfied with his home state Kentucky's neutrality, declared himself a Texan. James Longstreet. James Longstreet, a successful farmer's son, was born in 1821 in Edgefield District, South Carolina. Longstreet attended the West Point from 1838 to 1842 with future Civil War generals Ulysses S. Grant and George Pickett. But he was not a particularly brilliant student, finishing 54th out of 56 students. James Longstreet was a close friend of Union General Ulysses S. Grant and even attended his wedding in 1848. Longstreet first experienced combat during the Mexican-American War, where he took part in several major battles, including Palo Alto, Monterey, and Veracruz, and was often praised for his bravery. He returned from the war with a major leg wound and spent several years in a peacetime service. He later worked as a commissary officer, scout, and fort commander on the Texas border. He possessed a limited number of slaves and had no interest in politics. In 1861, he entered Confederate service as a brigadier general. A.P. Hill. Ambrose Powell Hill was born in 1825 in Culpeper, Virginia. His father was a prominent politician and merchant whose connections helped Hill secure an appointment to the West Point. Hill ranked 15th in a class of 38 upon graduation in 1847. His roommate at West Point was future Union General-in-Chief George B. McClellan. While in the U.S. Army, the two friends competed for the affection of the woman who later became McClellan's wife. The former classmates would meet in combat during the Civil War at the 7 Days Battles and the Battle of Antietam. Hill was commissioned to the 1st U.S. Artillery and was sent to Mexico during the closing stages of the Mexican-American War. He then served as a quartermaster on garrison duty in the Deep South and was involved in operations against the Seminoles in Florida. His health, meanwhile, continued to be a concern. Hill suffered from prostatitis, the result of gonorrhea he had contracted while at West Point. On March 1, 1861, Hill resigned from the United States Army. P.G.T. Beauregard, Pierre-Gustave Touton Beauregard, was born on May 28, 1818, into a wealthy Creole family in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana. He grew up on a sugarcane plantation outside of New Orleans. Beauregard received an appointment to the West Point in 1834. He was a popular cadet, gaining the nicknames Little Napoleon and Little Creole before graduating second in his class in 1838. In 1841, he married Marie Antoinette Laure Villeray, the daughter of a Louisiana sugarcane plantation. Beauregard worked as an engineer during the Mexican-American War and was wounded at the Battle of Chapultepec in 1847. During this time, Beauregard ran unsuccessfully for mayor of New Orleans in 1858. Beauregard was appointed superintendent of West Point in January 1861, but he was fired after only a few days, most likely because to his obvious sympathy for the Southern cause. Beauregard then resigned from the United States military in February 1861, following his home state of Louisiana's secession from the Union. Alexander H. Stephens. Alexander Stephens was born in 1812 in Crawfordville, Georgia. He grew up poor and was fostered by relatives when his parents died when he was 14. After an unsatisfactory time as a school teacher, he studied law and began working as a successful defense lawyer in Crawfordville in 1834. Stephens first entered politics in 1836 when he was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives and served many terms. He was elected to Congress in 1842, where he opposed both the Wilmot Proviso and the Compromise of 1850, both of which sought to limit the spread of slavery. As discussion of secession grew, Alexander Stephens argued that the Southern states should remain loyal to the Union and that a solution should be found through Congress rather than separation. He was elected as a delegate to Georgia's Special Convention on Secession, where he voted no, but defended the state's right to secede if the northern states kept trying to nullify the Fugitive Slave Act. In November 1861, he was named Vice President of the Confederate States of America. He famously stated that,
"The great truth is that the Negro is not equal to the white man. That slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition."
Thanks for watching, subscribe and press likes.